Welcome back again, everyone. If you were here last month, welcome home. And if this is your first time, then you really picked a great one to start with. And I'm really excited as we jump right in. So, again, welcome. If you've been with us for the sessions that we've had so far, which is session 1 and 2, then you know that really our goal is to go really deep, right? We talked in the first one, we talked about identity shift in understanding wealth. So, who do you have to become in order to really fully encompass what wealth building looks like? And then the second month, we talked about where your money should work, and we talked about diversification and all the different buckets that you can really put your money in to help it grow and to help it really start thinking about wealth building. And so today I want us to go a little bit further. I want us to start with one question. And this is a question that maybe nobody asked me during my 4 years of medical school. Nobody asked me during residency. It wasn't something that I was asked during residency. And nobody even talked about it during like full-time training in emergency medicine. And it's a question that I keep asking today, right? And it is, what are you building that doesn't require you to show up? And that is a very important question that I really want people to think and to lean into, right? And it's not what you are earning, right? And it's not just your title, but what are you truly building? Most of us here, we were never taught to think that way. And that's why that we're having this conversation today. That's why this needs to change. And I'll ask you that question again. It is, what are you building that doesn't require you to show up? Are they, and you might not have that answer yet. This might even be your first time that question is being asked to you, but at least my goal is to plant the seed to have you start thinking about that so that we can come up with the right answer. So now I want us to name what most people in this room are living, right? You earn well. A lot of us earn really well. You might be a physician, you might be an attorney, you might be an engineer, you might be in tech, you might be a senior executive, right? And so by every external metric, right, you've made it, you're successful. But this is the part that nobody talks about, maybe like at the dinner parties or when we go out. And this is the truth, is that your lifestyle runs on you showing up. It runs on you being there, on being present. And so if you stop doing that, your income stops. Your mortgage doesn't care about burnout, which a lot of us are either experiencing burnout or have experienced burnout in the past, right? The tuition doesn't pause because you want to take a sabbatical. You still have to pay for tuition for your kids, if you have kids, if they're in school, right? And so we keep having conversations around this, which is high income does not mean wealth, right? High income without a system to convert that wealth into something that works without you being there, it's just like a cage or golden handcuffs. And I know we've heard that terminology before. And the longer that you stay in it without building your exit strategy, the harder it is for you to leave, because then you get dependent on it because your lifestyle is matching the career that you're living in or what you're building. And the whole purpose of having this conversation is that so that we are informed in order for us to make a better decision that can help us move us forward. That is the reason why I'm having this conversation with you. Again, right? For some of you, you are experts, right? And you're already building and you already understand what wealth creation looks like. And for some others, right? Maybe my younger folk or people who never got taught this, right? This is the first time you're hearing about it, right? And you think, oh, I'm good, right? I have a lot of money. But does that translate into wealth? That is what I want you to start thinking. And this is the framework, right? When I talk about building outside of your career, I'm not talking about quitting your job tomorrow. I am not anti-career at all, but I am anti-dependency. Depending on that thing for everything else, I'm anti that, right? So I want us to think about 3 pillars, and that's the whole premise of the presentation today. And it's wealth, it's freedom, and it's purpose. It's those 3 things. And I want to help you kind of understand that building them alongside each other is really the way that you'll see success. And so when we think about wealth, right, these are assets that generate income whether you show up or not. So you're building something that does not depend on you being there, right? And in the beginning, you might have to be there to start it, to build it, to grow it, right? But really, you're thinking about assets that generate income without every second of your time. And then freedom really looks like control over your time, your location, and decisions that you're making. So you might want to travel the world, right? That might be what freedom looks like to you. So it might be location freedom. It might mean working from Hawaii, or it could look like traveling with your family and maybe doing like locums jobs as you travel, right? That looks like freedom. It might be wanting to work only 10 hours, right? And then the other time, maybe spending it writing a book. I don't know what freedom looks like to you, but any and every of those things are okay, right? And then purpose is work that means something to you, not just your employer. So it's a thing that people come to you for. It's a thing that you feel like you're so angry if it's not going well, right? If there's something that you're like, man, I really truly am passionate about it and it's not going the right way, right? That might be the thing that is your purpose. And wealth, freedom, and purpose are not sequential, right? You don't get wealthy, then get free, then get purposeful. That's not how it works. And I said it a little bit ago, but you build them in parallel, right? And what I've learned is that a lot of people focus on just the first one, right? And even then, right, sometimes they don't do it right, right? So when I talk about not doing it right, right, you save, and then maybe they max out on their retirement accounts, right? And they do what their financial advisor tells them. And then 30 years from now, right, maybe they retire. But I beg to differ, right? I don't think that's what we want to build. I don't think that's what we're thinking about building here. I want us to build a life where you have options right now, right? Not at 65, not at 59 and a half, not at, like whatever that age is, right? Retirement age, not then. What does it look like when you start building right now? I think that's so important for us, and not just thinking about like retirement age or 20, 30 years from now. These are your best years, right? Why don't we live them really well? Okay, so I talked about wealth, freedom, and purpose as the three pillars. Let's start with wealth. And I don't mean net worth on paper, right? That's part of it. But I really mean the assets that send you money, right? What are you building today that is working for you, and that's really helping you to build wealth? So I want you to think of it like as a ladder that has three rungs on it, right? Most high earners, again, are stuck in the first one. So you save, maybe you invest in index funds, which is good, right? You contribute to your retirement account, and that's great, but you're waiting, right? What you're doing is that you're betting on like compounding growth over 20, 30, 35 years, and you can't touch it without penalties, right? That's not wealth that you can use today, right? That's wealth that you can look at and be like, oh, I'm building this, but I can't touch it, right? And we want to aspire to do more than that. Now, the rung two is where things shift a little bit, right? So you start thinking about cash flowing assets. So, real estate that produces monthly income, a business that runs without you, maybe licensing or some sort of royalty income, or even digital products, right? But anything that pays you, whether you show up or not today, that is what we have to start thinking about at that second rung. And then the third rung is ownership and its equity, right? You build or you buy something that has enterprise value beyond just cash flow, right? Maybe it's a company, maybe you build a brand, right? A lot of us just think that like we're just our careers, we're just our jobs, we're just our profession, right? Like I'm just a doctor, or I'm just a lawyer, or I'm in tech and that's what I know. But like if you thought about maybe even ownership and equity looks like building a brand, right? And that could look like so many different things, but it takes time to build that. It could even be a portfolio, right? Something that you can sell or you can pass down one day. But that's what that third rung really looks like. And this is a question that I want you to sit with today. Where are you on this ladder, right? And what is it going to take for you to move up to the next one in 12 months? Not 5 years, not 10 years. Like in the next 12 months, what would it look like for you if you went from, say, the first one, right, where you're just a high earner and you're maxing out your 401k and you have some money in stocks and you're waiting till 65, what would it take for you to go from rung one to rung two, right? What does that look like? At least what would it take for you to do that in the next 12 months? That's what I want you to think. And as I'm saying these things, right, as I'm telling you these things, if there's something that like stands out, or like if there's something that you're like, man, I want to focus on that, right, then do that. The whole idea is I want to share all the information with you. And I'll say that a few times. I want to share the information with you. And it's not for you to do everything today, right? But it's for you to pick one thing and then go after it with everything that you've got, knowing that like this is a journey and you'll get to the place where you have wealth, you have freedom, you have purpose. So, and another thing is like, when I said pick one thing, like I'm going to be giving you like exercises and maybe a little bit of homework, but spend the time, answer the questions, right? You don't have to do everything right now. Take a screenshot of the screen, but my goal is that you have a benchmark, right? You have kind of like where you're starting from, where you want to be. But no matter what, right, you have to take the first step. And taking that first step is making a decision today. So again, if there's something on the slide that's beneficial, take a screenshot, write it down, and maybe come back to it and review it later. So I'll start with the first exercise. This is an exercise that I want every single person, on this call, if you're listening to it, if you're streaming live on LinkedIn, right, I want you to answer this. Do it today, not next week, maybe before you go to bed. I know it's a little bit later on this side of the world, but like it's still noon, it's still 1 p.m. and it's even still 10 if you're out west. But the question that I kind of want you to answer is, what does your life actually cost per month, right? Like just think about it. And I'm not talking about just like your gross income. Like I want your real all-in monthly burn. So housing, insurance, kids, lifestyle, everything, right? Write it down. Or you don't even, it could just start off with like opening the notes app on your phone and jotting down a few things. But like most people have never done this, honestly. And when I did it for the first time, right, the numbers surprised me. And I think it might surprise you as well. It might be more, it might be less, but it's something that you should just see to gauge where you are. And then the next step, right, is what will your ideal life cost? So not fantasy, not like I wish I could work zero and travel the world, not that, but like real specific, like this is a life that I actually want number. Maybe it's less than what you spend right now because, half your time is like stress spending. Maybe it's that, or maybe it's more because like you want to travel, right? Or you want to fund a project or you want to do something. But I do want you to be specific because you can't measure like what you don't know, right? So if you don't write, if you're not specific, if you don't put it down, it's not really something that you can evaluate. So the third step, right, that number from like step 2, right, that number is what you have to think about, like your freedom number, right? That's maybe how much passive income that you need every month to make work somewhat optional, right? Do not at retirement, not 30 years, not 20 years, not 35 years, but like when work becomes optional, everything changes. Everything about how you show up really changes, right? The way you negotiate changes, your risk tolerance changes, your creativity comes back, just to name a few examples. And I've seen a lot of people do this exercise and realize that that number is actually closer than they thought, right? It just means tweaking a few things here and there, but it's very, very possible. It's very doable. And all you need to do again is just restructure maybe how you're deploying capital today. Either way, right, you cannot hit a target if you don't have it defined. So if I don't know, right, then like if I'm just guessing, I'll never get to that number, I'll never get to that solution. So this is something that I just want you to like think about, right? Just really think about, even if it's the beginning stages, but I want you to put some thought into it. So pillar 2 is freedom. And I need to reframe this for you because I think high earners, we have this backwards. And we are taught that freedom comes like at the end, right? That you work towards that. So work hard, you save, you sacrifice, and then one day in the distant future, right, you retire and you finally get to live. I think that's an awful plan. I think that's kind of, I think it's terrible. And not because, I don't think it's terrible because saving is bad, but but you're betting your best years on the back end of your life, which you shouldn't do, because those should be your today years, right? And so I think freedom is not, I don't think freedom is a reward, right? I think it's like a design decision. So you make a decision as to what that looks like. So you design, your income so it doesn't require your presence, right? You design your schedule so you have margin. You might design your investments so that they give you options today, not in like what year are we in, 2026, not in like 2056, right? Not 30 years from now, but what does it look like today? And I will tell you, right, I practice emergency medicine on a reduced schedule right now, and that's by choice. But that did not happen by accident, right? It happened because years ago, like, I made a specific financial decision that gave me choices today, right? And so it's decisions that we make, right, that help us build this freedom plan. It's not just hoping, wishing, praying, all the things, right? You have to do the work, but first of all, you have to at least have a target, right? And every person on this call, you could do the same thing, right? The timeline just depends on where you start. But you have to start today, right? The design starts today, but the timeline is like, okay, I want this in like 5 years or in 10 years, or what does this look like if maybe I grind these next 5 years and build, and then be able to deploy that into various other things. But at least you're starting to think about it today, and I think that's the most important thing. So I want to take you through this audit now. And it's just 5 questions, right? Answer them in your mind, answer them honestly, write them down. But I think that if you at least start thinking, again, I keep saying that my goal is that we plant the seed for a lot of people today and then start building on that. So the first question I have for you is, if you stopped working tomorrow, how many months could you sustain your current lifestyle? So I know that we all have, or we should all have, emergency funds, right? But that emergency fund will not sustain your current lifestyle. So if you had to stop working tomorrow, right, your full lifestyle, how much, like, how long will you be able to sustain that for? That's the first question I want you to answer. Then the second question is, what percentage of your income comes from sources that don't require your time? And a lot of us, like for me, a few years ago, the answer was none. All I had was work. So ask yourself that question, and then just like write the answer, think about it. The third one I want to ask you is, do you own any assets that pay you monthly? Not just like appreciate, right? But that pay you, maybe cash into your account, or like whatever that looks like. Do you have anything? And then the fourth question is, could you take 30 days off tomorrow without feeling very anxious from a financial standpoint? Can you do that, right? Can you even think about maybe taking a sabbatical to like really figure out what life looks like? Could you do that? Do you have the plans in place to be able to do that? And then the last question that I want to ask you, just I want you to think about, food for thought, is, are you building anything right now that compounds, whether you're there or not, whether you're present or absent? Do you have an idea? Do you have a thought? Do you have something that you could do? Now, if you answered yes to 0 or 1 of these, then you really truly are dependent on your career. And I'm not saying that from like a judgmental standpoint. I'm really just saying that, like, we are maybe diagnosing a problem, right? Right. With any diagnosis, once you name it, then you can treat it, right? Once you know what it is, like, you can fix it, right? So that's what 0 to 1 looks like. Now, if you said yes to 2 or 3, that means that you're starting to think about this, and you're maybe in transition, right? You started, the seed has been planted, maybe it's been watered a little bit, right? And so now you're figuring out, how can I say yes to a few more things? And I want to say to those people, keep going, right? You're onto something. And then 4 and 5, right? If you answered yes to 4 or 5, right, then you have real freedom architecture in place. You've gone from more than thinking about it to really starting to act on it. And now all we have to do is like optimize it and scale it, which I think is the fun part. But most people, like, if this is the first time you're even understanding this concept, right, you might score 0, you might score 1, but that's the whole point, right? The goal is that we come together to try to change that number. My heart is that we learn and then we have the tools with the ultimate goal to improve our lives. That is truly what all of this is about. And now, this is the pillar that most people skip entirely. And honestly, it's the one I think that maybe matters the most. When someone asks you, what do you do, right? When someone asks, and this used to be me before, but when someone asks you, what do you do? Your answer, the first thing you answer is your job title. I'm a physician. I'm in finance. I'm an engineer. I'm in tech. I'm a lawyer. I'm a teacher. And that makes sense, right? Because you have invested all these years in building that specific identity, right? And so that's what we know. That's what you show the world. But this is the danger, right? When your identity is fused with your profession, you somehow like lose yourself if you step away, because that's all you know. That is the only person that you identify with. And I've watched in my career, right, I've watched a lot of physicians burn out and really feel completely lost. And it's not because they didn't have money, and it's because they had no identity outside of like their white coat, right? That's the only person that they knew. Hi, I'm Dr. This. There was no vision to their life beyond like their next shift or their next day at work, right? And I would say probably to their detriment. Now, these are people who have made a difference, who have saved lives, like whatever field you're in. But I think purpose is the thing that you build, even if no one paid you for it, right? It's the problem that you can't stop thinking about. Like, it's that thing that gets you so angry, right? It's the people who you want to serve. It's the legacy that you want to build for your family, for future generations. And you'll never find it if every hour of your life is consumed by your career, right? You won't really truly find that, right? And it's a career that you can't even afford to step away from. So, and that's why I said in the beginning, right? The freedom and the wealth pillars have to be built alongside this one. Like, you're thinking it has to be freedom, it has to be wealth, freedom, purpose along the same kind of the same like trajectory. And the reason why is because when you do that, right, when you're building those two, they start to create space so that your purpose can emerge, so that that can come out when you're building alongside. You don't want to, work so hard to build wealth and strategize your life that you forget that there's more to it, which is where purpose comes in. So, and if you don't know your purpose yet, right, that's okay. And also, you can actually have more than one purpose in life, and you can have different purposes in different seasons. And a lot of people don't know their purpose yet, right? They just wake up, they went to school, they start working, and they're just so busy becoming busy professionals that you never really had time to become ourselves, to become yourself, right? And that's okay. That's why we have these conversations, to be able to spark some of that. So these are, again, kind of some of the 4 questions that will get you closer to understanding that. So, and it's not like a career quiz or like some sort of personality test, but it's just asking you, right? Sometimes the right questions elicit the right answers. And if you don't ask it, you're not going to get to the solution that you want to get to. So the first question I want to ask you is like, what problem makes you angry enough that you want to solve, right? What does it look like? Is it like poor, is it like bad water in areas that you could help fix that, right? And it's not something that like you're mildly interested in. Like, it's something that gets you so angry that you're like, the kind of anger that keeps you up at night, that you're like, I want to change this, I want to make a difference. I'll say for me, right, when I understand the path of wealth creation, I became angry watching really brilliant people stay trapped in their jobs, maybe sometimes in jobs they had outgrown, because nobody taught them that there was another way, right? That really got me angry enough that like we're doing webinars like this to just really educate and to help you understand that there are other paths to what you're doing. And the second question I want to ask you is like, what do people come to you for outside of your job? Like, what is the thing that like, so not your clinical skill, not your legal expertise, right? What that other thing, right? The thing that like friends and family and colleagues ask you about. Maybe like you're really good with I don't know, stocks, or maybe you're, whatever it is that you're really good at, right? That's a signal that that's maybe something that you're really passionate about. That's something that could lean, when you put more time, effort into thinking through it, right? Your purpose might be in it. You might be the person that that gets called on when it's time to really think about, like, how do I move my life forward, right? Maybe you're that family member that's able to give direction, and that looks like, if you dug deeper, maybe working on like a personal development part for others. I don't know what it is, but that's on you, right? What is that thing that people come to you for outside of like your tech job? The third one is, if money was completely irrelevant, right? If money was not a thing, what would you do on like a random, I don't know, Wednesday morning, right? I know it's not vacation and it's not sleeping in, right? But what would you build? What would you create? What would you work on? That answer tells you something very important. That's the thing that like brings you life and brings you joy. That is not your work, right? That's not your 9 to 5, your everyday job. So I want you to think about that. And if something like jumps right out, then that's awesome. Lucky you. But sometimes it takes a little bit of sitting. It takes a little bit of introspection. It takes just a little bit of time working towards figuring out these answers, and that's okay. And the fourth one is, what would you regret not building? So if you had 5 years left, right? What would you regret not building? And I think that question cuts through everything, because what would that be, right? Your purpose lives where some of those answers overlap. You might know one of them, you might not know all of it, and that's okay. But more importantly, you don't have to have it figured out today, right? You just need to start asking the questions and finding out the answer, because wealth without purpose is just like, it's just a comfortable cage, right? You've made money, you've built money, but what more? What next? I think we as human beings, there's part of our life that has to be purpose driven. And so figuring that out, I think it makes for a fuller life. So we were talking about this recently in our community, My Expansive Life. We had a conversation about this exact thing, and I coined it like the identity gap, right? It's the distance between who you are as an earner. So what you're earning, what you're making, and who you are as a builder. So that kind of gap, right? As an earner, what you're doing is you trade your time and your expertise for income, right? And you're like brilliant at it. You are excellent at it. But as a builder, right? So that's earner. As a builder, you now start thinking about like creating systems and assets and opportunities that compound over time. And that is a complete different mindset. And that's why we started this series with kind of the investor mindset. But that mindset is so different from someone who just is an earner to someone who's really thinking about building. Now, in school, nobody taught us to think like owners, right? We were trained to be very excellent employees, excellent practitioners, and the system really rewards that. But the system also depends on us never leaving, right? So that system will never teach you how to build outside of it, because it's dependent on you being in there doing the work, right? And so those space, right? This the gap, right? Closing that gap is the real work. And it's not just like, it's not a new investment strategy. It's not a side hustle. It's a true fundamental shift in how you see yourself, in what you believe you're capable of creating. Again, this doesn't come overnight, right? This does not come overnight at all. This is the work that you need to do. But first, it's realizing that there is a problem, right? It's realizing, what does life look like when we start building upon these pillars? And when you find out that, right, the work is hard, but it's very doable. And so that you can then see the end result where you're not just an earner, you are way more than that, right? You are now building something that's going to outlast you, outlive you, but you're building something. So I don't want to leave you here with just inspiration, right? And that's why every step of the way I've asked you questions so that you can go think. It's one thing to like come here and say, just like uplift you, but that inspiration is going to fade by, I don't know, Thursday, right? But I want us to kind of leave with some sort of a plan. And now this plan, right, that I put together is really 90 days, but it's going to take longer than that, right? This is kind of almost restructuring your life. So it's definitely going to take more than 90 days, but my heart in this is that you start, is that you do something. So the first month, right, go, which we're in, and for those of you who needs a little fire, right, the first quarter is done, and before we blink, right, Q2 is gonna come and go. Before we know it, like the year is around the corner to end. I can't believe like it's April and it's already half of April. So that's just how fast this time, this world that we're living in is going. So make a decision, start, because truly time is waiting for no one. So the first month, right? Figure out what that freedom number looks like, right? Audit your income sources and be honest with like what percentage is dependent on your time. When you do that, right, start doing research and thinking through like what available cash flowing assets are there. Pick one, go deep, whether it's real estate, whether it's business ownership, whether it's licensing, whether it's digital products. Like, what does that look like? Pick something that truly interests you, right? Research it like your life depends on it, because honestly, freedom does depend on it, right? So figure out what that looks like. And then maybe the second month, make a move. And it's not, nothing about this is perfection, right? It's just make a decision and do something, right? Maybe you place some capital, especially if you're, a high earner and you have residual income, right? Place it into a cash flow and investment. Maybe start a revenue project. It could even mean that you really spend some time restructuring your entire portfolio, like what you have right now, and then maybe restructure it to figure out ways to generate income, not just grow. So you're not thinking about, okay, I just wanted to compound and grow, and so that in 20 years I'll benefit from it, right? Maybe you restructure it to make sure that it's more income generating right now, so that you're building now and you're partaking in it now, as opposed to waiting 30 years. I will tell you this, like, action beats analysis every single time. A lot of us smart people, we get stuck in like analysis paralysis and we never move on. It's better for you to take some sort of action. It might not be perfect, right? But you took it, you learned from it, you built, and you grew from that. So that's what the second month looks like. And the third month, right, I want you to kind of design your schedule. Now, this could look like towards the end of the year, right? But I would say I want you to cut one thing, reduce one commitment. And this is not just reducing it so that you have time to Netflix and chill. It's not that, right? It's renegotiate something, right? But I'm saying all of this because I want you to create some time in your schedule. So this could look like 5 hours. Could look like, I think I want it to be anywhere from 3 to 5 hours, right? That you take back. But I want you to use that time as like a builder time, right? So it's protected time where you really work on your wealth, work on your freedom, work on your purpose. You're not just working for your employer's goals, right? We do that where we go to work, we're required to do that, right? But work on yours as well, right? So what is it like? And that's what I mean by designing your schedule, right? How can you take back some of that time by cutting down one thing, one commitment, renegotiate something, and then really use that time to build something, right? Use that time to start thinking about what you want to create. Even use that time first to like restructure, your life, really sit down and think about this, answer these questions, and then from there, build on that. And I'll say this, right? 90 days from now, what that could look like. It could look like 120 days. It could look like the rest of the year, but like have a number, have a move, have a margin, have a plan, right? That is the foundation that everything else is going to be built on. So we talked about the wealth, we talked about freedom, we talked about purpose, and we talked about kind of coming up with a plan where you can start taking action on how this can happen. So, as we wrap up, right, we've talked about the three pillars and really how to go at strategizing it. I want to tell you how I use these pillars in my life, right? I want to tell you how this really, truly played out in my own life, because everything that we've talked about today, I did, right? A few years ago, I was working full time in the emergency room. I was in emergency medicine and I loved the work, right? I was making a difference and I was excited about that. But I was also, at some point, I had to be very honest with myself. My entire financial life, right, depended on me clocking in. It depended on me showing up at work. If I got injured, if I got burnt out, or if I just wanted to take a breath, or even, if like I got fired, right? Because and that happened to some of my colleagues. If any of that happened, my income stopped right there and then. And made me realize that I was very career dependent, right? And when I first did that test, I scored one on that audit. And I I did my own freedom number exercise. It looked a little different from what I shared with you guys today. But the one thing I really knew that I needed to start doing was I wanted to start going from just saving money to really figuring out cash flowing assets. That was like the biggest thing in like my whole plan. I didn't have purpose all figured out, and I didn't have freedom kind of all figured out, but I really wanted to understand, how can I go from just, working and saving to really start thinking about cash flowing assets. And so that's really what led me to apartment complexes. That's really what led me to real estate syndication. And I remember my first investment. I remember thinking, I was driving home from work and it was 2 a.m. in the morning. And I thought, I don't want this to be my whole life, right? I love what I do and I'm making a difference, but I was like, there has to be more life than that, right? And so that was the kind of impetus that made me make that first investment. And I invested 50,000, and that deal returned annually about 16%. And I didn't do any work. I was still going to work. I didn't manage a single tenant. I didn't fix anything. I just owned a piece of an asset that a professional team operated, and it was paying me, right? That was when I got proof of concept. And that moment kind of rewired my brain. So I stopped thinking like an earner and I started thinking like a builder. I wanted to start thinking, well, how can I continue to do that, right? And eventually I didn't just want to invest in syndications, right? I felt like I had figured something out and I wanted to help others do the same thing. Like I wanted us to come together and think, really, how can we be building and how can we be buying these assets and building wealth, right? And that's how Phoenix Capital was born. And today, right, we manage over 153 million in assets along with our investors, right? Because we're all part owners of this. And now I still practice emergency medicine, but like I really practice it on my own terms. I'm on a significantly reduced schedule, and it's because I want to, right? Not because I have to. But I share that with you, right? Because this was not just like a one-time thing, right? I slowly saw the problem, and then I started figuring out how I could solve that problem. And that's the difference between like the three pillars. That's the difference that like when it happens to you, right? You start building them, you start building that plan. And for me, right, it was real estate, but for you it could be anything, right? It could be there are multiple other things, but whatever it is that resonates with you, right, start doing that thing. All my goal today is that I do want every single person on this call who's listening, who's streaming it, is I want you to start building something, whatever the vehicle you choose, right? Whatever it is, it could be starting a business. Like I said, it could be digital. It could be consultancy. It could be, there's a lot of really cool things when you sit down and you figure out what it is that you like doing on a Tuesday morning when no one forces you to do it, right? That could be the answer that helps you build, that helps you figure out your purpose, that then even leads to building something that leads to wealth creation. So it could be really cool, but you wouldn't know if you don't think about it, if you don't start doing the work, right? And if you don't start building. So my heart for you is that whatever vehicle you choose, that you just start. You make a decision, you start, and you go with it. So that is all I have today. I want to say thank you for your time. If anybody has any questions, if there's something that you're thinking about that you're like, I don't really understand how to do this, or if you want to connect with me, please feel free to just toss it in the chat. I'll reach out to you. If you have a question about like what the audit looks like, is a 90-day sprint, does that really make sense? Like, please ask me, and you'll get access to this presentation. You get access to the slides if you want, but it starts with having real conversation around these three pillars. But if you start, right, you will succeed, but you just have to start. So I'll leave it open if anybody has any questions. But thank you so much for spending your Saturday afternoon with me. I think someone's typing. Well, um, as they keep going, typing, I'll just leave you with this quickly, right? Um, we don't just want to, again, we talked about this, like we just don't want to earn well, right? You want to build well. And your career is going to give you the income. Now you have to think about turning that income into something that lasts, something that gives you choices. That's all we want at the end of the day, is that we want to have choices, something that outlasts like our paycheck, because that can stop tomorrow. So that's really what I want us to be thinking about. But I will wait again for whoever's typing. If they have a question, I'll hang out a little bit. But I just want to say thank you to everyone who showed up, and everyone who continues to show up to join in the conversation. Thank you. Your story is inspiring. I came in late. Can we get the recording? Absolutely. We will definitely send the recording out. You should get it within the next 48 hours. You should have the recording anytime. Okay, everyone. It was wonderful having this conversation, and we will be back next month. If there's a topic that you're interested in, if there's something that you want to build upon, please send it to me. I'm available on like any social media platform. You can send me an email. Feel free to reach out to me. If there's something that you want to learn about, I would definitely include that in our topic lineup. Perfect. Okay, everyone, have a great rest of your day and a wonderful rest of your weekend.